so far away.
Exactly.
So no job.
The girls in seminars tell the same mashal, and it's interesting, they hear it. That at some point, usually the beginning of the year, that you meet some girl on the street, her name is Susie. So you can say that about a guy here, right? But we'll do it here. We're talking about the girls. Some Susie. And you want to bring Susie to Sim, that Susie should, experience a little Yiddishkeit. She doesn't know anything about it. She's an American college student. And you ask the people in the Sim who run the Sim, can we bring Susie for a day? Yeah, sure. For a week? Yeah, sure. Let Susie come and see what it's all about. So they bring Susie. So I ask them, where do you want Susie to sit in the class? In the back or in the front? In the front. Because you can hear her. And in the Farbrengen, where do you want Susie to sit? With the people who are schmoozing or the people who are part of the Farbrengen? So obviously you want Susie to sit. They all say it, right? They want Susie to sit with the people who are listening to the Farbrengen. And if Susie stays for Shabbos, where do you want her to sit at the Shabbos table? The people who are sort of doing Shabbos, or the people who are talking about makeup and nail polish and a different part of it. Well, that one they have a little harder time with, but they do answer in the end. Says, okay, fine. You're never Shabahamish. You're never Shabahamish. You're Susie. Where do you want her to sit? Where do you want her to be? Where is she going to be affected more by what's going on? But that's what we're trying to do, right? That's what we're learning here, right? That's what we're trying to do. So where are you going to put your never Shabahamish? The back of the Farbrengen, so you can schmooze, or where the Farbrengen's happening, right in the front, where you might even get a zetz on the shoulder, not on the face. In the old days it was in the face, now it's on the shoulder.
I mean, it's across the table from you.
So across it. This room it's all the front, right? But you were talking about 45 people in a room. If you're sitting in the back, it's now you might be sitting in the back because there wasn't room in the front. Obviously that happens. I mean, there's not room for everybody in the front. But where would you put Susie? Everybody says the same thing. They'll put Susie in the best place. Now, I hope everybody has their copy because someone decided that it was important to clean the office where us teachers get to sit, and took all of the books that we had and just took them away. I don't know what they did with them. I have no idea what they did with them. Without talking to anybody, just came and took everything, and that included any copies I had of any Maamer and everything. So I don't know where they are. So if we have to make more, we can make more. But so far we don't have to. Okay, so we're in the dugma. Yuvan Baveda of our mashal. Our mashal was that the father hides from the child in order to test whether the child is a tippish or a chochem. If the child is a tippish, so the child cries for his father's disappearance and then gets on with his life and basically, lives his life in a way in which basically there's no father, and he has to put up with that. And again, at the beginning, obviously that was difficult, but he got used to that, and he lives his life within the context of whatever that would entail. The chochem is the one who looks for his father constantly and is constantly trying to walk in the path of the father in order to just get a glimpse of the father, even if it's just from behind. Which is such I find the whole mashal absolutely stunning. The way the Rebbe Rashab explains it in terms of the difficulty of it all. And if we're honest about it, it's difficult. I mean, not difficult to the extent that it's not uplifting and enjoyable and exciting, but it's still very difficult. And then at the end, of course, of the mashal is that the father, in his great joy and his doubled love for his son, by virtue of the fact that he's tried so hard and worked so hard to find the father reveals himself to his son. So the Rebbe is talking about, the Rebbe brings that up in a very relative, interesting enough to tefillah. Right? And we got about 6-7 lines down. So let's start. Okay, we'll start from the third line down, and we'll just read through the next 3 lines very quickly, read them and translate them to get a running start. Because we were just about to enter into that place where the Rebbe distinguishes between what we have seen is some sort of Veda Pitam Vadas, some avoiding involving our intellect, and something else, which we haven't seen inside yet. We talked about it yesterday, we haven't seen it inside, so let's see where we go. Right? So the difficulty of our that which makes it difficult for us to daven, and when the Rebbe talks about davening, he's talking about gilui nekudas alev, that we truly reveal that part of us that is intensely and powerfully connected to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore davening is an incredible outlet for that part of us, right? The mashal of the Baal Shem Tov when the king, again the same mashal, right? Usually it's the king sending away a prince. When the king sends away the prince, so it's interesting actually, just throwing this, the famous, which I think we're going to start tomorrow, because if we talked about it yesterday, I think we'll do it. It's a short maamar in it, so I think it's something that everybody has to see, Maim Rabim. So before the Maim Rabim in Parshas Nayach, so the Rebbe said a sicha. I mean, it was all basically a sicha. It's not that they sang the Maamer in the Rebbe, and we'll talk about it tomorrow when we start the Maamer. The Rebbe said the Maamer from his room upstairs, and it was piped into 770 downstairs, because it was after the heart attack in Shmini Atzeres, and the Rebbe hadn't left his room yet. So the Rebbe speaks, and then it just sort of turns into a Maamer, and then goes back to a sicha. But in the sicha before, the Rebbe brings this basic idea of the mashal of a father sending his son far away, right? And the son has to find the father in that place. The mashal of the Baal Shem Tov is often, talks about a number of times, is the king sending the prince away, and the prince is challenged to reveal the king in the distant part of the kingdom. It's not so much that the prince has to find the king in the Baal Shem Tov's main mashal, but the prince who's connected to the king, but he has to reveal the king there to those people who are far away. So that's the neshama coming into Elam Hazeh and revealing Elokusi or Dir B'Tachtoni. Okay, here the Rebbe is talking more mitzad the Nefesh Bahamis than Nefesh Elokis. So interesting enough, we're not talking so much about the prince as the son. I don't know whether anybody's ever made a distinction between those two, but it's interesting. When it's the prince, it's usually the Nefesh. Right, and in this case, I mean, what part of us is having a hard time doing what the Rebbe is describing? Not my Nefesh Elokis. I'm having a hard time accessing my Nefesh Elokis. That's my problem. The Nefesh Elokis is there, it's fine, but I can't access it. And that's the Nekudas Alev is the Nefesh Elokis. That point in the heart is the Nefesh Elokis, the godly soul and its intense love for Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's very, very, very hard to access in Olam Hazeh, because we're somehow, I mean, here it's not so much we were sent away. There's a hiddenness in this mashal. So also in Maamer, the Rebbe also talks about the hiddenness of it all. It's very interesting. Right? In the sicha before the Maamer. Right? So here it's about the difficulty we have davening, because we can't find that place in us that davening expresses. Again, the mashal of the Baal Shem Tov, that the child is sent far away, the prince is sent far away, so the king gives the prince things to do to reveal the king in that distant kingdom, and that's Torah mitzvahs. But the prince also wants to maintain a connection with his father. Right? In our language, we would say the king wants to call home sometimes. Right? He's far away, he wants to call home. So what's calling home? That's davening. Right? That's how, I mean, the Baal Shem Tov obviously doesn't use the mashal of calling home, but the idea of the king, the prince's desire to be in contact with his father. Even though he knows he's far away, and he knows why he's far away. He realizes he has a mission over here. He was sent overseas, okay. But he still wants to connect to his father, and what's that? That's davening. Now, we have a very hard time accessing that aspect of davening. So, that means also evidently, I would assume, and it's it's certainly true, that means that our neshama isn't satisfied by our davening to the extent that it could be, because it's not accomplishing what it would like to accomplish, which is that incredibly intense connection, right? Okay, so now the ikar is that intense connection becomes part of our conscious reality, right? Shemisrachek, third line, Shemisrachek Hashem lichitapes begilui b'meicha b'lei. Kadosh Baruch has distanced himself from being comprehended in Mayach, brain and heart. So in other words, intellectually and emotionally. Adrabah, ma'od kasha lamit adas oispalus alei. Right? The opposite is true. It's very difficult to concentrate deeply and fully understand and internalize an idea, and it's very hard to experience emotional excitement about the existence of God. Gamba Vedos alpi tam padas, even on the level of tam padas, even on the basic intellectual appreciation of the greatness of God. Kaved ma'od l'kashra date be'emes. It's very hard to connect his das, again, das being that third power of intellect, which is all about now I'm going to say it, but in an intellectual term, the intellectual experience of the idea, meaning a very clear and deep connection to the idea. Such that this godly idea should illuminate in a revealed way in his soul. I find that very, very difficult. That doesn't mean that we don't appreciate the idea, and that doesn't mean that we don't get pleasure from the idea. But it's just as easy, meaning 3 minutes after we learn the idea, we might be onto something else, and if someone asked us, well, what did you learn? We might take a minute to remember or might not remember. I mean, that's extreme, but an hour later, it'd be very easy not to remember. Wait, what was the idea? Right? And in all fairness, if I don't review the idea, it's definitely going to disappear. Intellectually, not this maamar, any idea that we learn, if I don't review it relatively quickly, I'm going to forget it. Right? No, that's just the way it works. That's why it's a good idea. Right? I'm not talking to the married men in the room. It's a good idea at some point in night Seder, you spend some time reviewing the maamar that we learn in the morning. 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour. 15, 20 minutes going over whatever piece of the maamar we learned in the morning. Why? Because then you remember the maamar. If not, so it's interesting, and it might even be some amazing ideas in the maamar. Usually there are, but they disappear. Why? If I'm not reviewing them, I just forget them. They say, whoever they is, that review within 3 days is what's necessary. But after 3 days, it's almost as if you're seeing it for the first time again. That's what they say. Right? No,
It's very generous. I'd say like after it's very.
They'll give 3 days.
It's a long time.
Well, yeah, but if you review it within the 3 days, it's true. You might not remember it before you open the book, but as soon as you open the book, you will remember that you just learned this. Whereas if you look at it 2 weeks later, it's almost as if you're looking at it for the first time. Now it's not, because you did learn it once, but you're gonna have to go through it again. There'll be a somewhat makiftic understanding of the question and the answer. Yeah, there was a question. The answer is I don't know exactly what it was. Right? Whereas if within 3 days you remember what the question was, you'll start the question. Oh yeah, I remember this question. I'll go through it. Remember the answer. Yeah. And then there's a Havmi who might actually remember it. Marash once told the Chassid, he learned the maamar, and he told the Rebbe that he had learned this maamar, and the Rebbe said, "Are you living the maamar?" So the Rebbe Marash told him to do review on the maamar. I think it was 400 times.
Oh.
Right? And the Chassid said for the rest of his life, everything he saw was through the prism of that maamar. It was just there, and everything was seen through that lens. It's so clear to him. Now, there are 400 times is a lot of times, obviously, but a Lubavitcher Chassid who's been a Lubavitcher Chassid since he was a kid, right? He was born into it, whatever it happens to be. Okay, and he's 55 years old. How many times has he seen the Frierdiker Rebbe's Basi Lagani Maamar Tavshin Yud? He's chazered it every year on Yud Shvat. He probably learned it a few times in between again. He's seen it 40, 50, 60 times. Right? So that should be a maamar that he's pretty familiar with, right? And anything that comes up in life that is relevant to anything discussed in that maamar, that person will see it with the lens of that maamar. Okay. It's the idea now, it would be a good idea to chazer it even more. such an unbelievable. The very fact that our Rebbe taught that Maamer 40 plus times, obviously, is somewhat of an indication that the Rebbe thinks it's an important Maamer to learn. So, but this is all al pitam v'das. We're still talking intellect. Intellectually, I have to come to a deep appreciation of something, and that's difficult. And it might take me 400 times. Okay, but that will give me a chance of internalizing that, so it actually becomes very, very, very much part of my conscious reality. Ubefrat, in particular, what's even more difficult than coming to the deep intellectual understanding, particularly, she's spelled belibre be'emes, that he will truly be excited in his heart, la'avas Hashem, to love God. Gam ba'ava shal pitam v'das, even the level of love that is simply al pitam v'das, meaning the level of love that will come as a result of an intellectual appreciation of the fact that God's worthy of my love. Even that takes real work. That doesn't mean it's not something that we can do, and as a matter of fact, we're commanded to do it. It's a mitzvah. Right? But that's still difficult. That's very difficult. Why? Because the Eibush is hiding our mashal. Because the Eibush is hiding. Vaben chacham maving. What does he understand? And this is at a certain level. You can say this about a lot of things, right? But I don't think it's not solely hyperbole to say that this is an unbelievably basic principle of Chassidus. The next half line, V'ben chacham mevin asher chaka zu eina amitis chas v'shalom. It's not true that the Eibush is far away. He's really right here. He's just making himself as if he's far away. And that's what the Ben Chacham understands. That it's all Elokus. Right? In V'yadaita Moskva, so we talked about what's Teva, what's nature. So on one hand, people say, well, nature hides God. Okay, well, that's true. That's what we're talking about. The Eibush is concealed by the natural reality. Okay, but Al Pi Chassidus, what's nature? Nature is not this. I get to be God. This is not nature. And you're supposed to know that I'm behind here. This is nature. What's this? Also me. This is me. Now, if you see this is real me. I mean, you know whether I'm having a good day, a medium day, am I hungry, am I tired, all right? You see someone's face, oh, gee, you look tired, right? Okay, that's the one I always hear, which is depressing, right? So, right, but what's this? It's also me. It isn't any less me than this, it's just less revealed me. If you only saw this in a person, you wouldn't know who they are. If you saw them on the street, you wouldn't recognize them, that's for sure. Okay, but it's still them. So this is Shem Elokim and this is Shem Havaya. Okay, Pnimius and Chitzonius. It's all the Eibishter. So the first thing a person realizes is that it's not a true concealment. Ki'im rather l'nasei. It's simply challenging us so that anything we do is real. The very fact that the Eibishter hides himself that's what gives you and I the possibility of doing something that's not connected to him. Therefore, when we do something that is connected to him, it's real, has real value. Why? Well, because there's a possibility of not doing that. And so when you do it, it's real, it means something. In this context, even in the darkness, he will not prevent himself from lishtadel, to work very hard, with all of the strength, power, and effort, to run after his father. And this is what the pasuk says, so now, how do you run after the father? She's baining. He'll contemplate. It's so interesting what the Rebbe is about to say. Because the Rebbe is not going to talk about Eilam Hazeh. I mean, he is, but first he's going to talk about higher levels of reality. What's the first he's baininess he should do? You have to learn some chassidus before you can do this. He's baininess. All of the levels of revelation, the very beautiful, godly light revealed by Eilam in the upper worlds. So this person learns enough to realize that it's not just that the Eibster created this world, he also created metaphysical worlds, and those metaphysical worlds are places of unbelievable beauty and revelation. And what do Chazal say in the fourth parak in Pirkei Avos is the one moment of pleasure in Gan Eden, which is in Elam, lower Gan Eden is Elam Yetzirah, upper Gan Eden is Elam Abriya. One moment of pleasure in those worlds is greater than all of the pleasure that could possibly be experienced by every person who has ever set foot on earth at any time, meaning all of the pleasure imaginable in the 6,000 years of the world's existence, intellectual, emotional, physical, and spiritual pleasure that could be experienced. One moment in Elam Haba is greater than that.
Which is very interesting, connecting to one of the last maamar that we did, talk about Simchas Beis Yeshiva being the joy that they felt during the Beis Hamikdash is more than any of the joy that we have now, that we've ever felt collectively now.
Right.
It's very interesting.
Right, but
It's
there's
like
up there, the pleasure is even greater.
how much more?
Right?
So
Okay,
wow.
fine. Unbelievable. And yet, what do we know about those worlds? What does the person know? He has to be mizbeinin. Kol zeh, all those worlds, it's only an illumination. It's a ray of light. It's a revealed ray of light, and that revealed ray of light is unbelievably pleasant, incredible, beautiful, majestic. Mashu. If I were Yossi Jacobson, I could say 15 words now, and I run one after the other, but I'm not Yossi Jacobson, so I can't do that. Right? An incredible state of reality. But what is it all? It's just a ray of light. So like a ray of light of the sun. What can the ray of light of the sun do in this world? Unbelievable stuff, right? It can grow all of our food. It can warm up our house. It can, as we're sitting somewhere, and it's shining on us, it warms us, and we feel wonderful, and we feel relaxed, and it's nice, and it even actually gives our face a little color, so we look healthier than we really are, right? It's amazing. Nothing like the sun. Okay, but
specific.
What?
Not specific.
Well, it's not specific for sure. It'll also shine on the garbage as much as it'll shine on the wheat. That's true. But that being said, it's still an amazing thing, and it's a very beautiful thing. On the other hand, not the sun. It's just a ray of sun. It's not the sun itself. Right? Imagine what the sun itself must be in terms of its power and its heat and light is what comes out of it. Itself is something quite astounding. So astounding that there were lots of generations that served it. And he contemplates that all is as naught in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, that all of those great levels of godly revelation that exist in the worlds above are relative to a Kadosh Baruch Hu himself as naught. Ayin. Right? Because if I were to define existence absolutely, I would define those levels of existence as non-existent. Because how would I define existence? As something that has existence by virtue of itself. Therefore it really is. Because anything that has existence by virtue of something else, so if I'm looking at a certain, a ray of light. So if I'm looking at that ray of light and it's completely revealed to me, okay, but what do I understand? That what's here, it's true, what I'm experiencing is the ray of light, but what is the ray of light revealing? Its source. Right? That light by that, that's why we use the mashal of light for Elokus all the time. Its source. Right? Okay, so then what really exists? Not the light. The source of the light exists. The light is simply an expression of the existence of something transcendent of it. Right? Now that doesn't mean the light isn't. There's light, I see it. Okay, but on a deeper level, if I really try to understand what I'm experiencing, I'm not really experiencing the existence of the light. I'm experiencing the existence of the source of the light. The means to experience that is the light. So sun. Right? When you and I see sunlight, what do we truly experiencing the existence of the sun, not the existence of the light. The light is completely bottled to the sun and is considered as not relative to the sun because the sun has existence without the light, but the light has no existence without the sun. If there's no sun, there's no light. I mean, the sunlight that I'm looking at, not the electric stuff. Right? Okay. So it's kaloi choshiv. It's as if not. Now, the nature of light is, and this is parenthetical, but it's always very important to understand because it's brought to this all the time. The nature of light is that it's so connected to its source that it's me'ein hama'or. It's like its source. And therefore, I can often blur the distinction between the light and its source. And so you and I might say, without being a complete moron, I might say, boy, the sun's bright today. Well, I mean, if you really analyze that statement, that's a really stupid thing to say. What do you mean, the sun is bright today? And the sun wasn't bright yesterday when it was cloudy, right? The sun hasn't changed. What changed? Sunlight. Okay, but sunlight and sun are so powerfully connected one to the other that we basically don't distinguish between them. And so we'll say, boy, the sun's hot. But that's a reasonable thing to say, even though it's completely not, well, it is true, but it's not true about what you're experiencing. Because actually the level of heat that you're experiencing from the sun, how would you compare that to the level of heat in the sun itself? Kaloi choshiv. It's completely insignificant. That would not be called hot. Right? Okay. Well, that's what the Rebbe is saying here about upper worlds. Right? Those worlds are kaloi choshiv. They're worlds of revelation. That sunlight's revealed to me. I have no problem experiencing the sunlight, and therefore I have no problem experiencing the sun. But which of those two truly exists? Well, the sun, not the sunlight. The sunlight is kaloi choshiv relative to the sun. Okay. So too the upper worlds are kaloi choshiv relative to HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. And therefore, al kain, roi, it's fitting, shetichle elav nefesh kol chai, that it should be completely tichla, kiloin, like completely absorbed, completely. So it can also be a language of destruction, but not destruction in a negative way, in a positive way. Just completely enveloped and nullified by the greatness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So every soul will have such a tremendous desire to connect to Him, to the Eibishter. A love dafka, Him Himself, specifically. V'lo yirtzeh, and he won't want b'shum gilui or. He won't necessarily desire a revelation of light. If he thinks about what reality is truly all about, so even when and therefore he'll think about the upper worlds. And what are the upper worlds about? A tremendously powerful and beautiful revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But those worlds are kaloi choshiv as not compared to HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Therefore, he'll have an incredibly powerful desire to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, this is all in seichel, right? This is all his benenus. This is his intellectual contemplation, meditation. It's going to hopefully lead to something else. So he's not going to be interested in light per se. He wants the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Like the famous statement of the Alter Rebbe, right? I don't want your Elam Haba, I don't want your Elam Hazar, I want your Gan Eden. I don't want your Gan Eden, your Elam Haba, I want you. Mili b'Shemayim. Who is to me in Shemayim? Meaning, who is to me in the upper worlds? I don't want the upper worlds. I want you. Ki'im kach yasela. What will he desire? Sheyia kol cheftzei. All of his desire, Ritzonu, and his will, likalel, to be incorporated batzmus yizbar. In atzmus. Whoa. That was fast. In 4 lines, the Rebbe just took his atzmus. Based on this mashal, what's the Ben Chacham looking for? The Father. Not an expression of the Father. Not acharav of the Father. Not the back of the Father, where he's aware of the existence of the Father, but he's not really seeing the Father. He's seeing an expression of the Father. No, he wants his Father. What's his Father? The essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, so what does that mean if we don't understand that? It's something we have to understand so clearly that we can dream about it and discuss it in our sleep. Right? 3 basic levels of reality. Right? And some of us know this. Okay, fine, it's still a good idea to review 3 different states of reality. This is where everything that exists. Everything is either in the realm of what you and I call kalim, vessels, which is finite reality, or light, which is infinite reality, or etzem, the essence of God, which is beyond infinite reality. It's the source of infinite reality, and it's the source of finite reality. It's not limited by either. Infinite's limited, it can't be finite. Finite's limited, it can't be infinite. Atzmus is the source of both. What's Or? Or is the revelation of the unlimited aspect of the essence of God, so to speak, Atzmus. What a Kalim? The revelation of what's called Koyach HaGvul, the power of limitation that exists in Atzmus. That he can limit himself. He's not limited by being unlimited. But really that doesn't make a lot of sense. That's why in English it's easier to say. In Hebrew it's actually harder to say, which is unusual because usually it's the language that explains God much better than anything else. But in English, it's very easy to distinguish between infinite and unlimited. Infinite is a state of reality, but it's limited. How is it limited? It can't be finite. Unlimited would mean no limitation whatsoever. Even not the limitation that infinite reality experiences. So, what can't do? Express itself in finite. It's at itself. It can express itself in finitude. How? Well, with the help of that thing you and I call a kli. And the marshal done it so many times. I always look for something colorful, which is always hard to find because I'm not. Could I please have that green book? Thank you. Okay. So we're going to pretend it's blue just to not get into green photons. It's very hard there. Okay, it's also purple, it's blue and red. But whatever, here, it's all right. Okay, what's the dynamic in physics of this experience? Out here is what's light, colorless. Therefore, it can express itself in an infinite amount of color, so to speak. Right? Okay, when it hits this, what happens? This kli reveals a finite aspect of color in light and hides the infinite aspect or aspects of color in light. So every color but green is hidden by this thing. Right? Okay, so that's simple enough. That's what a kli does. A kli allows for a particular expression of something and conceals any other expression of it. So on one hand, a kli is revealing. On the other hand, a kli is concealing. So what does it do more, conceal or reveal? Well, that's a really interesting question, right? Because on a certain level, you can say it reveals much more than it conceals. Because what does it reveal? Well, it reveals the essential, not that it's revealing essence, but it is revealing the essential existence of its source. What's it hiding? Infinite reality. But it's not hiding reality per se. It's revealing reality. It's just hiding a certain aspect of reality, which is infinite. Right? Usually we talk about kalim as concealing, so that's true, but it's only concealing, so to speak, one thing. What does finite reality conceal? Infinite reality. But what does it reveal? Well, on a certain level, essential reality, because it's revealing the source of its existence, if you look at it the right way, right? You could, now, this is what this mushel's all about. I could look at it the wrong way. I could be the tippish and realize that, no, there's real hiddenness here. No! In the finite is hidden the source of it all, just like in the infinite, it's revealed the source of it all. But finite actually has an advantage. That's what the Rebbe is about to explain. What's revealed in finite? The essence of it. Because there's no revelation. Beyond revelation. The essence of it all. Essential existence. So what does the person want? He doesn't want to leave this world and be incorporated in the beautiful godly light above. which is what Chassidus stresses specifically in Chabad, stresses a lot, because a lot of people are very hung up on or. They're or junkies. They just want revelation. Okay, I get it. It feels good. But really, what does our Nefesh Elokis really want? The Eibishter himself. Not necessarily revelation of light. Matter of fact, the Rebbe says here, necessarily not the revelation of light. The Eibishter himself. That's what the Rebbe just said. Ki'im kach yaseh lo shi'eh lo chefetzer tzani kalo b'atzmo yisbarach va'av she'ein libo nispael b'zeh. And even though his heart isn't nitpa'el. Nitpa'el, hitpa'alut is ecstasy. But it also comes from the word po'el, which means to affect. So it can either be the ultimate effect, which is ecstasy, or just affected by it in the most basic way. Shein libe nispal, so it's not affected by this, but rishve eish be'emes, with a true burning, passionate love of God. I might not experience that. Mikol mokim, nevertheless. And this is really important, what the Rebbe is about to say. Yizgaber bezeh. He should fight very hard to overcome any external forces. Lisbeine, to contemplate binyanim elu betfilah, to contemplate these things when he's davening. Ulispile bezeh, and to be affected by this, bebechinas chitzenius haratzon al kol panim, at least by external will. Now the Rebbe is going to explain there's an external and pneumius will, but what's external will? There's a level in which I want this. Is it mamish the most powerful, essential expression of who I am, and it's all I want? No, that's pneumius haratzon. That's that's the true expression of what I want. But might there at least be some external expression of a desire to connect to a Kadosh Baruch Hu? Yes, I think every single one of us can appreciate the fact that that's something attainable to every single one of us. Do I necessarily feel that in my heart? Not necessarily. But am I aware of the fact, and does conscious me desire very powerfully a connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu? Yeah, that's why we're still looking for Tati, right? I mean, that's in the mashal. Why is he still looking for his father? Because he really wants to see his father. There is a distance from his father. Mitzadu, the mashal, the father, obviously the kid is really very powerfully connected to the father. Okay, we know that. That's why that's always such a powerful mashal. Okay, but he can't see his father, and so in the mashal, I assume there's other things happening in this guy's life. He when he's running after his father and looking, is he eating? Well, I assume he's finding a place to eat dinner every day, right? I mean, he's got to do that somehow, or else he can't keep looking for his father. It's not mentioned in the mashal, obviously, because the mashal is talking about a particular aspect of it. Okay, but what? Now, in the deepest expression of the mashal, the pnimius haratzon of the ben is he wants his father. There's no question. Okay. But the son is still looking for his father, even if there will be other desires in his life. He still has this very, very powerful desire to look for his father. In the nimshal, in Aveda, when is it that we will express that desire most powerfully? In tefillah. So what's the Rebbe telling us? Be misbeinen on the fact that your appreciation of Elokus is such that you realize that the loftiest levels of godly revelation are as if not compared to the Eibishter himself. And all you want is the Eibishter himself. And the Eibishter himself wants you to daven to him. That's who you're davening to. You're not davening to some level of godly light. You're davening to the Eibishter himself. You're davening to your father. Okay, so that appreciation can arouse in every single one of us a desire to connect to a Kadosh Baruch Hu in a very real way. Even though it might only be chitzonius. Because there might be other desires out there also, and they might also get in the way. Now the Rebbe's not going to say this here, but the Rebbe Shab does talk about this in other places, and Mashpim talk about it a lot. Saying one line in davening with the focus of all I want to do is tell the Eibishter that I love him and want to be connected to him, that's an amazing achievement. There's no extraneous thoughts in that one line. The second, if you can say, Heidu lavaya kiru bishmei, I don't even know if I get to the second half of the pasuk. But all I want to say is, thank you, Eibishter. That's real. That's not so simple. Right? Okay. They say you want to take a trip around the world, daven Shemona Esrei. Who knows where people go in the middle of Shemona Esrei? Here and there and all over the place. Okay. Say them. What if I can say, I'm going to say the first 10 words, 12 words with Baruch, I'm really just thankful the fact that the Eibishter, you're the source of all this bracha, and that you've connected me to what I'm connected to, and that connection is expressed through Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Okay, now who knows where I'm going to go next? What do we say next? Akela Godel Agibor Venera, which is Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov again. Godel Gedula, that's Avram. Gibor Gevura, that's Yitzchak. Nerda, Yaakov. What does Yaakov say when he's in base Kel? He says, Manora HaMakimahu, right? Yaakov's revelation is the level of Nora, awe-inspiring. Well, Tiferes, right? So that's Yaakov. Akel Godel Agibor Venera. Right? Kel Elyon, beyond all of that also. Right? And what does he want? He wants to give us good stuff. That's what he's saying. He loves us, he cares for us. Okay. But just to focus on who is that? Yes, we're talking about certain expressions of the Eibishter within the context of Elokei Avram, Elokei, but who is Elokei Avram ultimately? The Eibishter himself. Yes, that's expressed in Chesed and Gvura and different levels of godly revelation. That's true. But what's being expressed? The Eibishter himself. Let's keep. We'll just keep going, and then tomorrow we'll start another maamar. But we'll just keep going and see where the Rebbe takes us. Right? But at least the level says Chitzoni Yisrael Ki Yadua. And this is earlier on in the maamar in this sefer. Shegam B'Ratzon, the beginning of the maamar it's a very, very, very serious explanation about the union of Ratzon. What's Ratzon all about? Will. Shegam B'Ratzon yesh pnimis v'chitzonis. That in will, there's inner will and external will. Right? We've talked about that many times, right? That Pnimius Ratzon is what you really, really want. Right? Chitzonius Ratzon will, in the simplest terms, will be those things necessary to happen in order to get to Pnimius Ratzon. For instance, right? The Moshe we've brought many, many times. You pick up the phone to call a cab. Okay, so why'd you pick up the phone? Because you wanted to. You can't pick up the phone if you don't want it, but you didn't really want to pick up the phone. You did want to pick up the phone, or else you wouldn't have picked up the phone, but you didn't really want to pick up the phone. You wanted to call the cab, right? Okay, but you don't really want the cab. You want to get to where the cab's going to take you. If you could just go like this and be there, you wouldn't call the cab, but you can't, so you want to get in the cab. So the cab's going to take you to the airport. So you want to be at the airport. We don't really want to be at the airport. No one wants to be at the airport, right? You just want to get on the plane, okay? But you don't really want to be in the plane. You want to get to New York. You don't want to really be in New York. You want to be in the meeting that you have in New York, right? But you don't really want to be in the meeting in New York. You want the results of that meeting that you're having in New York, which is you're going to make $1 million from that meeting in New York. It's a good meeting. Right? Okay, but you don't really want the $1 million. You want those things that $1 million allows you to accomplish and experience. Okay, so for the Yid who's what's that? He wants $1 million so he can give lots of tzedakah. Right? He's gonna do it with other stuff. He's gonna buy dinner, but for those of us who have never had the ability to do it, the ability to write a really serious check in tzedakah is something I would love to do. I just can't imagine the pleasure of writing a check that really matters. Okay, we all give tzedakah. But my, $1,000 over here and there, it helps. But, they like really write that check that mamish makes a difference. Must just be an incredible experience. It must be so pleasant to be able to do that. Like, wow. I've never been able to do that. I don't assume I ever will be able to do that. I'm not exactly doing those things that are going to afford me that opportunity. Okay, say it. But it must be a tremendous thing. Especially I used to raise money, so I always wanted to put myself in the other end. How much pleasure you could just forget about this mice, just the guy who's raising the money. How much pleasure you're going to give him, and to help a Jew that way. Okay, so he wants to give tzedakah, but is that his panemius aratzon to give tzedakah? No. Why does he want to give tzedakah? Gedei tzedakah shemekaravis is a gula, because tzedakah is big because it brings the gula. Because what does he really want? He wants Mashiach to come. That's his panemius aratzon. He wants to bring Mashiach. So why do you pick up the phone? Bring Mashiach. Right? The panemius aratzon of picking up the phone was to bring Mashiach. Even though there's so many layers of the onion between picking up the phone and the what's happening in the middle of it all, the true panemius of it all. So so you can't be. So did he want to pick up the phone? Well, of course he wanted to pick up the phone, but that's clearly not what he really wants. Okay, so the Rebbe now said an interesting thing. You and I can come to an appreciation of Elokus, that even though it hasn't penetrated down to the point where panemius aratzon. Now, the true panemius aratzon of every single one of us is Elokus. That's who we really are. Okay. But we haven't necessarily accessed that place. But through contemplation, and that, again, I said when we started learning this yesterday, so why are we learning this? Because this is such a fundamental idea about why we learn Chassidus, why we learn Torah B'chlal, Chassidus B'frat, the avodah that we do. What's it all about? It's all about coming to a point that our conscious reality becomes more and more sensitive to Elokus, so that at least on the level of Hitzonius aratzon, we'll say, I really do want to experience Elokus, but not experience Elokus means that the fact that it's going to make me feel good. I want to be connected to absolute truth that's called Atzmus. Is that panemius aratzon in terms of my conscious reality? Panemius aratzon of my nefesh elokis, that's panemius aratzon of my nefesh elokis. Is that panemius aratzon of my nefesh bahamis? You might my nefesh bahamis really still get a kick out of other things. Right? Really find other things. And as a matter of fact, if that other thing shows up, it might distract me from this one. That means that one's the panemius and this is the chitzonius, right? Because I'm distracted by that. Why am I distracted by that? Oh, because I guess I want it on a certain level even more than this. But does that mean I don't want this? No, that's not true. You do. And it's so important to understand such an idea, because what can happen to a yid? Right, and this is what people do to ourselves. We all do this to ourselves because our Nefesh Bahamis wants to do this to ourselves, because the Nefesh Bahamis is fighting like it wants us to win in the end, but the Nefesh Bahamis' job is to make us lose. Right? It wants us to win, right? Because it was created by the Eivter also, but its job is to do everything it can to make us lose. Right? And so, what will it want us to do? It'll want us to say to ourselves that my Aveda must not have been real because 5 minutes later I forgot about it completely. It's not true. When I was there, I was there. When I was there, I was there. Now, does that mean that I'm really there? No, it means that panemius aratzon, I'm not there, right? So it might. That's why I'll lose. That's why I'll forget. I mean, that's the conversation going on in the maamar before this. Remember, this maamar started with the idea of zechira, remembering. What's remembering? Focus. What's forgetting? Losing focus. Why can I forget? Because I'm not connected to it. Right? We always are astounded by the Rebbe's memory. Right? It's just beyond belief, right? It's not normal, the stories of the Rebbe's memory. Remembering people who went by for dollars 15 years before and what the conversation was. It doesn't make sense. How do you do that? Well, if you're completely focused on that event and it's a function of your panemius, then it doesn't disappear. There's no shikha there. There's no forgetting there. Just completely. It would be like you forgetting an incredibly important event that happened to you. You're forgetting the fact. Forgetting your wedding day. You don't forget your wedding day. You don't forget things like that. But wait, where did we get married again? Where what was the name of the hall? Did we have a band? Was there a band? I don't know. What do we serve? falafel? I don't remember. So that doesn't happen. I mean, it might happen to someone who, God forbid, has no memory whatsoever. But a normal person, why? Because that event is so powerful. So there's people who live in a place where every event is that powerful. I don't know I don't know what that looks like, but it's so connected to every little moment in reality, which is really a little revelation of the Eibishter, that every moment is a moment of unbelievable power. So don't forget it. I told you that story about that little boy. Remember, I told the story in a Farbrengen that I heard from a friend. And the story was, this is why you should tell stories in Farbrengens, because you might get double back, because two people then told stories in the Farbrengen about the same Indian. A friend of mine told me a story. He's a shaliach in Haifa. So a Litvish friend of his came to him this is 35 years ago. Litvish friend of his came up to him and said, your Rebbe is absolutely astounding. So he said, well, what's pshat? He said, well, my wife and I were in New York. And it was a Sunday, and we decided that we should go to the Rebbe for dollars because it was our 25th wedding anniversary, and we had gotten a bracha from the Rebbe when we got married. Right? They weren't Lubavitchers, but other people did that. They wrote the Rebbe for a bracha before they got married, and they got a bracha. So they figured it would be nice, Hashkocha Pratis, on their 25th anniversary. They happened to be in New York, and the Rebbe gives out dollars, so they should go by the Rebbe and get $1. So they went. And when he walked by the Rebbe, he told the Rebbe that 25 years ago today's our 25th anniversary, the Rebbe gave us a bracha for our wedding, and Baruch Hashem, it's our 25th anniversary, and we were in New York, and we decided to come by for another $1. We want to thank the Rebbe for the first bracha. And the Rebbe said, he spoke to the Rebbe in Hebrew. And the Rebbe said, Nidmeh li shezeh machar. I think it's tomorrow. And they realized they had made a mistake in the Hebrew date. And, because they were in New York, so they weren't they don't say Tehillim every day, so they don't know what day of the Hebrew month it is, right? We say Tehillim every day, so we have to know. But if you don't say Tehillim every day, it's easy to forget what day of the Hebrew month it is, especially if you're in New York, right? Here in Eretz Yisrael, you'll see it in the newspaper. But so they forgot, they made a mistake. They ever say, I think it's tomorrow. Now that's not normal, right? I mean, that was a letter 25 years ago from someone who hasn't been in touch with the Rebbe for 25 years. So I told that story. So someone then told a story about a student of his who told him a story. When he was a little boy, he and his father and his sister went by the Rebbe for lekach. And he was the father was holding both of them in his hands because he was also small. And they went by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave him, and the Rebbe gave the father, and the Rebbe gave his sister, who was on the left. And she turned away and she didn't take it. And they went by. You can't, there's no time, like, just go. She didn't take. The next year he was walking, and the little girl was in her father's right hand now. He might have actually had her in her left because he wanted to take the lekach in the right, but I'm not sure. But he had a hand free, the father. And the little boy he was in front, and the father got. And the Rebbe took out 2 pieces and gave to the girl. And the father asked, why did she get 2? And the Rebbe said, she didn't get last year. That's not normal. That's something that you and I just can't. So then, Mendel Tenenbaum, that story was told by someone named Yeshua Fieldstein. Mendel Tenenbaum then told the story. He has a friend in Crown Heights, and every time I tell the story, I would love to know who the friend is, but I don't seem to know enough to ask. He had a friend in Crown Heights who, every time anybody in the family went for dollars, and people in Crown Heights didn't go every week, they didn't bother the Rebbe every week and make the Rebbe stand there and give dollars for longer. They would only go on special days, birthdays, things like that. So there was one boy in the family who, every time anybody in the family went for dollars, he would tag along. And that was the joke in the family, that he's the Rebbe's dollars boy. That anytime anybody went, he would tag along. So he had more dollars than anybody, because he used to go every time anybody in the family went. So he went with his father. It was his father's birthday that week, and his father went by the Rebbe and mentioned that it was his birthday, and he got an extra bracha, shnas hatzlacha, or you get a bracha batzlacha, and then you get a $1 bracha batzlacha, and then if you said something to the Rebbe regarding something, if it was a birthday, the Rebbe would give you another $1 and say shnas hatzlacha, so have a successful year. So that happened to him, and then the Rebbe gave the little boy $1, and then the Rebbe said to the little boy, that must be 100. father didn't know what the Rebbe did. They didn't know. So the father said, it can't be, but let's go check. They went to his envelope. There were $99 in the envelope. This was the $100 the Rebbe had given that little boy. That must be on. Okay, so that's Zechira. That's what the Rebbe is talking about here. That complete focus on reality so you won't forget it. Because it's not Hitzonius Aratzin, it's Panemius Aratzin. It's mamish all that's happening at that particular moment. Okay, and those are the things that will make a very, very, very powerful impression. So the Rebbe says, you and I, though, at least can get to the point of Hitzonius Aratzin, that our desire while we're davening is to connect to the Eibishter truly. Now, if in order to maintain that desire for more than a split second, I have to stop and think and take a breath and say, okay, I want the next sentence I'd say to be an expression of that desire. And I have to know what the words mean. Because I don't know what the words mean, so then what exactly am I saying? Kiyadua, Shagam, let's go 2 more lines and then we'll stop. Kiyadua, Shagam b'rotzon yesh pnimius v'chitzonis. V'hainu Shagam b'aveda shalamayla mitam v'das. Even aveda shalamayla mitam v'das, which we would think is pnimi, something so internal and powerful. Even there's a level of pnimius and chitzonis. The kasher ar eloki, when the godly light, the izbeinus anal, that is revealed through this contemplation that the Rebbe just mentioned a few lines above, meir begilui mamish benafshe, when that light shines truly in his soul, va'az mispail be'emes, then he is truly affected and ecstatic. The bechinas penimius nekudis libe, in the inner points of his heart, meaning the deepest place in his neshama is revealed to his conscious reality. Shenim shachel Hashem, he's drawn to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, but teikif harutzoi, with the power of rutzoi, the desire to go up and be incorporated in godliness. B'kol etzem nafshe, with all of the essence of his soul. That's pnimis haratzon. Aval kasher ein ar elokim meir begilu, but when it's not necessarily revealed in such a true and pneumistic way and powerful way, ki'im, but rather mashe misbeinin, that which he's contemplating, b'zeh barichus izbeinus, that's which he's contemplated through the lengthy thought process of thinking about a Kadosh Baruch Hu and contemplating on the greatness of a Kadosh Baruch Hu and what reality is all about and what godly light's about, and there's a level beyond that called the essence of God, and that's what we can access in this world. Umispail b'libe, and he's affected in his heart shekach roi liyos, that this is what should be, this is proper. Sheyeh bebechinas kiloyan elav, he should be completely incorporated in a Kadosh Baruch Hu's Baruch Levadeh. Shezem misames etzlei ma'od, and this is something very, very real to him and very true to him. Shekach roi liyos, that this is what should be, even though he's not necessarily experiencing that, but he realizes that's what truth is. That's what truth is. Parenthetically, there is some emotional excitement by virtue of this idea that the person's not a stone. He is drawn to a certain degree towards the essence of God, but not necessarily a revealed expression of love. Because what is it that he's appreciating? Simply that first level of love. He's the source of your life, which is the first level of his beinunus. When Chassidus talks about his beinunus, it's the first thing we should contemplate. Which is what the Rebbe is talking about here is beyond this. But the first level is to just appreciate that the Eibishter is the source of your existence, and to appreciate most of us appreciate the fact that we're alive. Where does that come from? The Eibishter. Okay, so if someone brings me dinner, I say thank you. So if the Eibishter is bringing me life moment by moment, I'm appreciative of that. Right? And don't take it for granted. And hopefully, when my mother brings dinner, I say thank you, even though she brought me last night also. But I say thank you. Why? Well, because I'm still appreciative of the fact. It's not the fact that it happens every day. Right? There are people, and every now and then people say this, and I'm quite astounded when they do. Well, but she has to bring me dinner, right? Like she's my mother. Or they'll say, well, God decided to create me. It wasn't my idea, so why should I be thankful? People say that. And it's like really interesting. You know, whoa. So I think that's a healthy way of relating to something that. I remember once I gave someone a ride from one place to another place. And it wasn't out of my way. And when they got out of the car, they didn't say thank you. And I said to them, you should say thank you. He said, why? You didn't go anywhere. Wow. Right? And he didn't go, what? What did you just say? I mean, they're right. I didn't go out of my way. I really didn't. I didn't take one turn differently. I just went exactly the same place. All I did was stop there, which was really no big deal. So they were right about that. But there's still a certain mindset, a certain amount of appreciation for something, even though it might be for the person who did it, it's no big deal. For God to give us reality really isn't such a big deal for him. Right? It's not like he's working hard to do this.
He didn't have to.
He didn't have to. Well, but he did it. It wasn't my idea. It was his idea. Okay, but he did it anyway. So why don't you say thank you? That level of appreciation is chitzonius. That's chitzonius. It's not the panemius. The panemius is I realize all I am is an extension of him. Right? That's completely different. But, okay, I'm not an extension of you. I mean, I am. But I only appreciate that intellectually and emotionally and experientially. I experience my own existence, but I've come to the point where I appreciate that existence comes from you and is completely dependent on you. That's chitzonius. That's a beautiful place to be. That's an amazing place to be. That's the beginning of it all. And that's what the Rebbe says every single one of us can get to. Even if it's intellectual. It hasn't yet moved our heart. He said it's going to move our heart a little bit, but not to the extent that it could be moved if we were completely and totally connected. But that's also good. And don't think that that's not true because it might disappear. That's not true. When it was there, it was real. Right? And it disappeared. Say no. We haven't left Elam Hazeh yet. We don't really want to, right? Okay, we'll stop there. Maybe keeps going.
What do you say to someone if you're telling them about this, and telling about the analogy of the son and the father, and they said, well, there was not a point where I didn't know my father. I knew my father physically and mentally, and Hashem. Initially, I didn't know Hashem physically, unless you're going to go back to Matan Torah and say we were all there. I mean, how do you answer that?
How do you open up anybody to the Eibishter, right? So, everybody's different, but most people, Jews, since they have a Nefesh Elokis, if you talk about Elokus in a real way, and you have to believe it, because the Rebbe says over and over and over again, if you talk to a Jew and you don't affect them, the problem wasn't you, it was you. Because it wasn't coming from your heart. Wow. Because Chazal say, Devar miyetzim min halev nichnasim lelev. That's why we forbring and don't just have classes. So yes, a class can turn into, a class is a mini forbring and often, but I mean, the ikar of the class is the intellectual information that's being transmitted in the class. So that isn't necessary. Now, it should be things that are yotzim min halev, meaning the teacher hopefully is living that and it's real, and the student hopefully can appreciate that. But it is still intellectual information, and for bringing it's all yotzim min. Of course, it's coming through the brain, but it's yotzim min halev. It's not some prepared class. It's hopefully coming from the heart. Since my son was just talking about someone who teaches in the yeshiva where he learned, and who he came after my son, but he knew him. He's our daughter-in-law's brother, so we all know him. And he said the Bachurim love his Farbrengens. So he's a young guy. So why do they love his Farbrengens so much? And so he said something very interesting. He said, well, it's very real. He can cry, and he's not ashamed. I mean, what does that mean? I think most people can cry for breaking and not be ashamed, but meaning it's clearly this is something that he lives. This is coming from his heart. He cares about this, and that makes a big impression. So when you're talking to a Jew, one of the most important things to realize is you're not just talking to their brain. They have a nefesh elokis. You just have to somehow get through the fog on the outside to get into that place where they have a nefesh elokis, and that's why the Rebbe is so adamant that we don't water down the message. Because if you're watering down the message, the reason you're watering down the message is you don't think this Jew is shaykh to the truth. He is shaykh to the truth. He has a nefesh elokis. You have to tell him the truth in such a way that it triggers the nefesh elokis. You're talking to a nefesh elokis. You're not talking to someone far from God. You're talking to someone very, very close to God. It's all covered up. Right? So yes, you have to get through the covering. So you're going to have to find the words to somehow penetrate through that cover. But what you're trying to do is not convince them intellectually of some idea. Therefore, you're going to water it down so you feel that it doesn't challenge them. You have to water it down. You have to say the truth. Obviously, you have to say the truth in a way that the person can understand. Well, don't you understand that Judaism is all about atzmus and you're just living in the dark? What are you talking about? What's atzmus? What's elam hazeh? Who are you? No, so you have to say it in a way that this person can understand it intellectually, but the intellect is just the vehicle, the shah, the gateway into their nefesh elokis. And you have to always remember that you didn't have a nefesh elokis. And that's sometimes hard because it's so hidden. They do. And that's why Chassidus affects us like it does. Right? And that's, putting tefillin on a Jew will affect them. Right? Why? Nefesh elokis. They have nefesh elokis in there. Right? And it might be very, very hidden by the nefesh Maamer. It's okay. Still, it's in there. And if they're told the truth, then the nefesh elokis will appreciate it and might make a little more noise and therefore be a little more accessible to their nefesh Maamer. But is there any way of doing it that's guaranteed? There are people who sat in Yeshiva with the Rebbe and all they talked about, politicians, and all they ever talk about is how amazing the Rebbe. Are they Shem Shabbos? No. I understand. You met the Rebbe, right? And all you could ever tell you is the most amazing person I ever met, and I never saw anything like those eyes, and they go on and on and on and on, all these politicians, and they're always on the, gem videos, these politicians, this one and this one and this one. And it's not that they're not making it up. They were overwhelmed by the experience. It's something they remember 40 years later. Yitzhak Rabin, who was not a particularly sensitive human being, said the most amazing person he ever met was Lubavitcher Rebbe. That was the most amazing. Somehow, now, did it move him somehow? Yes, for sure. But ad grei kach that he decided, well, maybe what the Rebbe stands for is truer than what I'm living. Didn't make that connection, interestingly enough.
No, it's in politics.
But you know
He
what?
stayed in politics.
But at the end of his, supposedly at the end of his life, he actually started coming back. Like he started attending shirim. Like a lot of actually. he started
Shimon
going-
Peres did. I don't know about him.
And Yitzhak Rabin started coming back actually, ironically, before what happened, and that's why it's a question of how everything happened.
Wow.
Because he actually supposedly started realizing that all he did was actually.
He just destroyed us.
I don't know if that's how he knew it was wrong in the end.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I read.
Shimon Peres' wife got from here. Son.
Really?
Sonia left Yerushalayim, went back to their house in Tel Aviv. Said, you do your politics, I'm done with it, I'm not interested. And she lived in Tel Aviv. And he couldn't give it up. It's just,
You feel for certain people. Yeah.
he was the Achar. Can I say that? And he became president, and I think he couldn't give it up. She just, Sonia was her name. And evidently, she basically became, from there. Now, for, people of her generation,